And that opened the door. And I'm so grateful that he did that, because if he hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to get better and pass, right? So that was about 2 weeks, and then pretty much 3 or 4 mornings a week, I was driving out. Oh, the other thing I did was our plane, that heading indicator was processing too much. And so I was like, I did a couple weeks in our plane, and I make this VOR alpha. So I'm doing this VOR alpha approach, which is a very non-precision, like for the listeners, it is like probably the least precision approach you can possibly have.
You're coming into the runway at an angle of greater than 15 degrees.
Right. It doesn't align you with the runway. You're making kind of funny turns. And so I'm doing this VOR alpha approach into Council Bluffs, and I make the 45-degree procedure turn heading, and my heading indicator processes 30 degrees.
Sorry.
And no. And I was like, okay. At that point, I was able to recover because I knew where I was spatially, right? Hello and welcome to the Chris Wolfe Podcast on Cmejlia. Today, I'm here with my good friend, Adam Cmejlia. We're talking about, well, Adam, I'll let you kick it off. I want to let Adam take over the show today. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. The most common questions I get include, what ophthalmological codes or evaluation and management codes should I use? What ICD-10 codes do I need to bill with this CPT code? What CPT codes can be billed together and what can't? And my favorite, how do I manage a patient who has diabetes who comes in for a quote-unquote routine eye exam? These questions really highlight the confusion and uncertainty that serves as a daunting hurdle for providers, makes it more challenging for them to care for their patients and provide those patients with the best opportunity for a lifetime of ocular health and clear vision. That's why we built iCode Education, for this specific purpose. Our mission is to provide optometrists with resources to help you understand disease states, revenue cycles, and billing and coding so that you can put that on autopilot and truly care for your patients. Check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. We've developed a premier billing and coding bundle that includes all of our billing and coding resources in one place. We also have a 10% discount code just for listeners of this podcast. Enter the coupon code EYECODEMEDIA22 at checkout. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com. Hello, dedicated optometrists. Are you looking for a way to support your patient's vision and overall eye health? Let me introduce you to Vision Edge Pro, a visual performance supplement that stands out in our profession. Vision Edge Pro contains a balanced blend of mesozeaxanthine, lutein, and zeaxanthine in a 10-10-2 ratio. This combination has been scientifically shown to increase macular pigment density, which enhances visual performance, including contrast sensitivity and vision in glare situations. Additionally, Vision Edge Pro provides 300 milligrams of DHA and EPA, fulfilling the daily requirements for omega-3s as recognized by the leading health organizations. This ensures your patients receive the essential nutrients their eyes need for optimal health. Whether it's for everyday screen use, night driving, or enjoying the outdoors, Vision Edge Pro supports your patients in seeing their best. Recommend Vision Edge Pro for your patients today and help them achieve clearer, healthier vision. Contact your local MacuHealth representative for more details. Vision Edge Pro, because your patients deserve the best in eye health. Go to MacuHealth.com and use the coupon code PODCAST2024 at checkout for special discounts. So Adam, I'll let you start. I'll let you take it over.
So, I was thinking about this on the way over. I've done coming up on 360 episodes of my show of 2020 Money. Sorry, I had to get the shameless plug in there.
Go
I
ahead.
assume you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. Please.
2020 Money, the business of optometry. And I was thinking this is going to be one of the more challenging conversations that we're going to have because we have two pilots sitting next to one another, and I'm going to have to somehow steer a conversation in which we don't lose the audience, and both of us just start going down this path of fanboying over each other and our journeys in aviation and how awesome it is and talking technical and everything. Like, we want this podcast and this conversation to be valuable for the listeners of your show. So the reason that we are here in Bloomington, Illinois, at Vision Source, at a Vision Source regional meeting, I guess you would call this.
The Gateway Tour is what they're calling
Gateway
it.
Tour. You sent me a text maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago celebrating that you had passed your instrument flight rules, your IFR check ride. And both of us, loving aviation and using every possible excuse that we can to go poke some holes in the sky, you're like, hey, why don't you come on over and do a podcast recording with me, and let's talk about this journey of getting my IFR. And in my mind, I'm like, have plane, will travel. Okay, let's do it. So I'll kick off the question because I didn't even care. It's like, ooh, a reason to go fly. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I don't even care. Let's go. Now that I'm here, why are we having this conversation, Chris?
Well, yeah. So, there are a couple reasons. The first reason is that I think it's helpful to kind of reflect on doing hard things, right? Like why, and I think you have a lot of insight into being a pilot, obviously. So having this conversation with somebody else isn't going to be as back and forth. It's going to just be a narrative from what I have to say. The second thing is, getting my instrument rating was really hard. In fact, I failed the first time I took my check ride. And I didn't tell you that,
No,
and
you
I didn't
didn't.
tell the listeners. I have told only a handful of my friends. And the reason that I held it back was I think there's a big story in it. And I think a lot of times people think that if somebody's successful, they don't have any struggles in that success. So obviously I have a lot of growth to do as a human in general, but my instrument rating, for a number of reasons, which we can unpack if you think the audience would appreciate it or don't have to unpack, was really challenging. I made some mistakes along the way that I thought I could, which I would, doing over again, I wouldn't have made those mistakes. And I think there's a story in it. So that's why I wanted you to come talk about it. Not about the success. I mean, ultimately about the success, but really about doing hard things and then succeeding despite failure.
I really appreciate you bringing that up because I think it is something that is very often overlooked and assumed in this, dare I say, success porn environment that we're always in, right? If we're scrolling online and we're either on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, we all see everybody's successes. Oh, I did this. I accomplished this. I launched this. I ran this, right? Whatever it might be. But that's the destination. That was the accomplishment of set goal. But I think, cliche phrase alert, success is never a straight line. There are always zigs and zags. Sometimes it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes it's 3 steps forward, 15 steps back. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I would like to unpack a little bit why, when you look back at the journey of getting your IFR, and look, without going into details, I will say, again, pilot to pilot, getting your instrument rating as a pilot is one of, if not arguably, for recreational. If you're going to be a commercial pilot or a pilot for the airlines, getting your ATP, which is your airline transport pilot, like that is the mother lode of all exams. Unless you're going to fly professionally, we are not getting those. I have zero aspirations to aspire.
Nothing is harder than the instrument rating.
Correct.
If you're not going to fly professionally.
That is exactly it. For the recreational for us, that is the hardest rating to get. When you look back on the journey that you went on, you'll love this, what were some of those headwinds that you faced? Yeah,
well, I think the first one is I had this kind of, you and I have talked about this for a long time, but I think the first one is I always wanted to be a safer pilot, right? So the more you learn, the better you get, the more experience you have, the better you get. And I also there were a couple times where I would be flying places where, I was kind of I was definitely VFR, right? Mm-hmm. So still in visual flight rules for the listeners who aren't pilots, but it started getting dicey, right? And so then you're kind of going a little low or even diverting to other airports just to wait for weather to pass. And so I just didn't want to get caught, and that's the biggest thing. I've got a large family, so I wanted to always get better, and I didn't want to get caught in a place where I couldn't escape. That's probably the biggest two reasons that I wanted to pursue it. And then there's probably also a reason of when you talk to other pilots, there's a sort of a pride thing. Like, okay, you're either just a general private pilot, or you got your instrument rating, and then they take you seriously, right? Like, okay, take
you're
you a
not
little
part
bit
of the
more
club,
seriously.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, yeah, exactly right. And so there's probably some of that as well, where you kind of don't want to be looked at as like, yeah, you can do most of what I can do, but you can't do a lot of it,
Tail driggers are over here saying, well, hold my beer, watch this.
That's right.
I mean, any one of us that fly a tricycle gear plane are like, you're not a real pilot until you have your tail wheel endorsement.
That's right. Yeah. So there's probably part of that. I mean, that's kind of the biggest thing. And then I think the overarching thing is it's a challenge. And so I had flown for a couple years with my private license, and that also got to a point of like saying, listen, if I don't do this now, there's never going to be a good time. And the more I fly, the more opportunity I'm going to have to get myself in a bad situation that I can't overcome. And so that was kind of the emphasis. And so, February is when I really started kind of like studying, and I used a review program. Did you ever use Shepherd Air?
Shepherd Air, yeah.
And man, that's so much information.
Yeah.
So much information. But so I use Shepherd Air.
For those of you, Shepherd Air is the equivalent to KMK for boards.
Right. And so, although it's purely memorization,
Yeah.
right? Like pure memorization, and you're just taking the same questions over and over and over again. And there's a bank of 1,200 questions or something, and through that, I did really well. Like I missed one question on my written, and I had a lot of swagger when I left it. And also I was smart because I will always offer another pilot that I'll know. Like if I've got a bunch of pilot buddies and be like, hey, you want to hop on? I'm going over to Bloomington. And so I just always think it helps out just to be more safe, especially in my plane. I don't have all the nice avionics that you have that help with automation, right? So single pilot can be a lot of work. And so through that, I have buddies who have their instrument rating, and I would just always don the foggles. So I put gear on to make it simulate like I'm flying under, in instrument conditions for the listeners. And so I had a bunch of hours, right? Like I had pretty much all my minimum hours met so that when I really wanted to undertake it, I could just undertake it. And so July came around. I think July 19th is when I took my written, and then I passed my written, and then I was like, oh man, I know this stuff inside and out, And I had a lot of experience in straight and level flight with foggles on, right? Descending, making heading turns, but like minimal stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And so then I reached out to my instructor, my CFI, and my CFII, and I said, listen, I've got 5 days where I'm not traveling. This was the end of July into August.
Okay.
And I said, I want to do nothing but fly. I mean, I'll set aside 10 hours a day. I'm not traveling anywhere. And I had a couple days for like 3 weeks in a row. That was the mistake one. That was the headwind one, right? I thought, I know the book stuff well enough. I have some experience under foggles. I'm not going to get disoriented. So I can start. And I said, I know it's ambitious. If I'm not ready, I'm not going to push you, but this is what I'd like to do. And I'd like to be able to complete the minimum requirements. We do our cross country, and I had him hop on some different trips down to Houston. And so we got the cross country done. And anyway, so for the listeners, there's all these different requirements that I'm telling Adam about. And the reality is that I was, pretty much like, I'll say I was arrogant enough to think I could do it in 5 days, right? To think I could master the skills and really grapple with small mistakes in 5 days. It's just, and he warned me against it. He's like, I've never done this fast. Usually it takes guys 6 months.
It's like one of those accelerated IFR programs, essentially, is what you were trying to do.
Yeah, without going someplace and doing it. And that was mistake one. And he told me, he warned me, it's not his fault. I pushed him to do it. Had I not done that though, I would not have been so far in where I would have completed it when I did. So by the time I was done with that, I met all the minimum requirements. And honestly, I was proficient flying from, Omaha to, someplace an hour or 2 hours away, because all the changes that you have to make, there's a lot of instrumentation changes that happen. And on a check ride, it happens really fast. Mm-hmm. So, but in the real world, it usually doesn't happen that fast. And so I was basically flying in the real world without emergency situations, right? Without really low real weather. So I would fly and go miss, which means that you don't land the plane, you miss the approach, and then you'd go to the next airport. I could do that. I could do that with a lot of time in between.
Yep.
But
on a check ride, it's bang, 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 bang,
exactly.
bang.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing that happened in hindsight that was a headwind, and this I think speaks a lot to optometry. It may speak to you as well, but I got in the plane. I guess probably fast forward is good. We got to my first check ride, and I got in the plane. I passed the oral. I knew I'd passed the oral. I know the stuff inside and out. But I was doing my walk around before the guy got there, and I should show you some pictures of that day. They're nuts. So we had to let the fog burn off because it was even so dense that was
he going to let you take it in actual?
No. So he was like, no, the FAA doesn't want us to take people in actual on our license.
Yeah.
You're the pilot in command.
Yep.
So we had to let all that fog burn off because basically you have to be in simulated instrument conditions, not actual instrument conditions, because it was on my license, not on the examiner's license. And so we waited around, and I had patience that afternoon. These are not excuses. This is just the scenario. And I remember in my mind, like thinking, I don't know if I'm ready for this. Right? As I'm doing my walk around, I knew I was ready for the oral, and then there was just this doubt that slipped in my mind for the check ride. And so I let that kind of take hold a bit. And then when we departed, I just wasn't clean. You know what I mean? I made like this one little, he wanted me. So again, in my mind, I was not, I was in VFR conditions, right? So I'm departing VFR, not on a real instrument flight plan. And he says, when he gives me my clearance, he says, cleared as filed to Wahoo, turn heading 285, climb 3,000, squawk, blah, 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 right? And, he wanted me to turn right on course, but the pattern was left pattern. So I'm thinking, in my mind, well, I'm in VFR conditions. I haven't done the foggles. I'm not really under an instrument flight plan, so I'm going to behave, right, in visual flight rules. Not his fault, my fault. And so then, we make the pattern, and then I depart the pattern on a heading of 285, and he said, why did you not turn right? I was cleared you to the right heading, and I didn't have a great answer for him, right? And that flustered me, right? That was the first thing that got me flustered. That didn't fail the check ride, it just got me flustered. And then, but then I was acutely aware that at that moment, it was the first time that I never had somebody sitting next to me with my foggles on that I couldn't say, hey, Adam, I'm supposed to do this, right? Yeah. The approach looks like this, right? This is what I'm going to do.
You.
Yeah.
You are PIC,
I couldn't
truly
ask
PIC
him anymore.
Here. Yeah.
I could not ask him anymore. And that is, again, one of the things that was a headwind, right? I let my instructor think that my confidence and our relationship in the cockpit after so many hours put him in a place where he never said, I'm not answering that for you, Chris. I'm not answering that question. You need to know the answer. And that's a me problem, right? So those are the kind of headwinds. Like, I think that's the headwinds that we're facing. Now, I can explain the rest of the check ride and where the failure was. The next thing was, our avionics are a little bit older, so our autopilot, you're fighting altitude the whole time. It was kind of a bumpy day, and so we're trying to stay a little bit on top of the clouds, so it wasn't quite as bumpy. And so holding altitude, holding heading was just one extra thing that stacked because our heading indicator wasn't perfect. And then I make an approach into Lincoln, and it was the localizer approach, and I hit that. I got that, past that. And then he had me. It was the ILS approach.
Couple approach.
Yeah,
precision approach.
Yeah, so for the listeners, this approach gives you both vertical and horizontal guidance, and it can get you down to 200 feet above the ground.
Think of it like flying into a funnel. Like you start out far away from the airport, you're starting at the edge of this funnel, and as you get closer and closer to the airport, that funnel gets narrower, 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 and the instruments respond accordingly to your position relative to the airport. So the closer you are to the runway, the more precise you have to be on your approach.
Right. And my airplane does not fly that for autopilot. I have to hand fly that pretty much the whole thing, both vertical and horizontal, which is a lot of work. But I get that. I did that because you're just following needles down. And so then he had me go out and repeat it, but use the localizer instead of the ILS. Okay. So in this case, what you have to do is you get horizontal. So Adam's talking about a funnel, but you get horizontal guidance, but you don't get any vertical guidance. So you have to make your vertical altitude checks by passing a certain waypoint. So you get to a certain waypoint at a certain altitude, then you can descend to the next waypoint at a certain altitude. And so anyway,
think of it like stairs. They're called step downs.
Yeah, step downs.
Yep.
Yeah, so
that
people
funnel
call
that we're
it dive
talking
and
about.
drive.
That funnel that we're talking about essentially is now two-dimensional.
Yep, exactly. So, but the mistake I made was I had never flown two of the exact same approach simultaneously. So there's the other headwind, right? And I didn't even think about it. I didn't even know. So what do you think I didn't do? I didn't reload it in the box. So the GPS is the legal thing that you're following for the listeners to know exactly where you're located. So my assumption was I got the same thing. I'm just not following the glide slope down. I'm just going to do the step down instead. So I never reload the box. The waypoints never reload because it thinks I gone missed.
Waypoints for
right?
a localizer approach.
Yeah. And it actually in my play, it's all the same way. We have waypoints, right? But it's the same stations, but the box doesn't know it's different, right? Yeah. And so it basically never realigned how far I was away from the waypoints. And so I never made those step downs. And then all of a sudden I'm watching and I know something's off, right? And I'm not too low. So I stay at a certain altitude. Yeah. So I'm not going to kill myself because I'm too low, but I missed the waypoints. And then all of a sudden the examiner says, "Chris, take off the foggles." And I knew I had failed, you know, because they don't have you take off the foggles until you really land in the plane. And he goes, "See where you're at." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And it would have been the easiest. He was going to have me circle. He was going to have me circle to land. So I was on 3.6, circle 3.2. It would have been the easiest thing. I was just way too high. And there was, you know, and obviously I wasn't, but I failed, right? Yeah. And so we're flying back to Blair. Blair's about a 20-minute flight in my plane from Lincoln, and I was just, oh my gosh,
you're kicking yourself.
Yeah. And you know, I get about halfway back, and I'm like, why is this plane not getting there faster?
You still had flaps in.
I still had gear down.
Oh, gear down. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about gear. I still had gear down, and so I didn't harm the plane. You know, if you get to a certain speed, you know, but it was like I could not exceed 120. And I was like,
of course,
he
saw that. He
knew. Yeah. And I go up and lift the flaps up, and I look over him. His name's Andrew, and I said, "Andrew, I haven't failed anything for 25 years."
Yeah.
And he starts laughing. He goes, "Oh, Chris, you needed this." And he was right. He was totally right. I get goosebumps when I tell you that, but he was right. I mean, for all the things I've already said, I was not nearly as good of a pilot as I should have been. I could have passed that, right? I could have passed it, but I am so much better. So I land the plane in Blair. We debrief. My instructor's there. He thinks we're going to be cracking champagne, right?
Cutting the back of your T-shirt off and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a solo, I guess.
But you know, he thinks we're going to be celebrating. And, you know, and it's partly, you know, he shouldn't feel this way because it is not his fault at all. It's my fault. But, you know, as an instructor, you take pride in the products that you're putting out. And so, yeah, I guess, do you have any follow-up questions to that? And I can get to the next part of that, kind of doing the hard thing and the headwinds.
Finish your thought. I've written some things down that I want to explore with you, and we'll tie this back to business and specifically practice ownership. But finish your thoughts, and we'll take the conversation from there.
So when I landed, I spent 2 weeks thinking, I don't even know if I want to fly a plane anymore.
Yeah.
Like I am not good enough. Maybe I'm not cut out for it. Maybe I'm dangerous. Maybe I just shouldn't do this, you know? And, oh, by the way, if I'm going to do it, I've got the next 4 months of travel are just like, I can't do this on Thursday and Fridays. I can't do this on the weekend because I'm not going to sacrifice I'm not going to make it harder for my family. And so I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, you know? And so 2 weeks of just like serious grappling of like,
I knew mental anguish, just tearing yourself up inside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I only told a handful of people that knew I was taking the check ride. And, you know, my partners, Jamie, obviously there's some people that knew. And you know, you're ashamed. And then my instructor said, so I went with one of my buddies back down to Houston, who has got his instrument rating. We flew, and I was planning that trip, and I said, so I texted my instructor, said, "Well, what's your plans?" You know, and I was like, "Well, I don't know. You know, I got a trip down to Houston. Jeff's coming along with me, and I'm going to practice some approaches." And then he said, my instructor said, "Well, have Jeff check you off so that you can take your next check ride." You know, and that's kind of how I took it. Was like, Jeff isn't a CFII. Jeff can't check me off. You know, and so and he was right. Like I wasn't trying to have Jeff. But I was just trying to say, like, okay, can I do this?
He was thinking you were using Jeff as a crutch.
Right, and that's not what I was doing. I was just saying, like, I got to go here. This is what my plan is. And then he offered, which was a game changer for me, was he has these rules of, like, my instructor will not fly single engine at nighttime. He's got a twin Comanche. He's an old airline pilot, so he's got these rules of, like, single engine at night. You don't know where you're landing. But he goes, I can fly with you early in the morning. And I was like, whoa, he's breaking rules for me, you know? Well, he wasn't. He was basically saying, like, if we have to land off-site, like off-runway because of an engine failure, at least it's not cold and there's very small amount of window where it's dark. People could find us.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's 10 o'clock at night, you're there all night, right? So that was what his rule was. I didn't know his rule was not morning flight. I just thought it was any quote unquote night flight. And that opened the door. And I'm so grateful that he did that, because if he hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to get better and pass, right? So that was about 2 weeks, and then pretty much 3 or 4 mornings a week, I was driving out. Oh, the other thing I did was our plane, that heading indicator was processing too much. And so I was like, I did a couple weeks in our plane, and I make this VOR alpha. So I'm doing this VOR alpha approach, which is a very non-precision, like for the listeners, it is like probably the least precision approach you can possibly have.
You're coming into the runway at an angle of greater than 15 degrees.
Right. It doesn't align you with the runway. You're making kind of funny turns. And so I'm doing this VOR alpha approach into Council Bluffs, and I make the 45-degree procedure turn heading, and my heading indicator processes 30 degrees.
Sorry.
And no. And I was like, okay. At that point, I was able to recover because I knew where I was spatially, right?
Because you're not IMC at this point.
No, I was just in Foggles, right?
Yeah.
And
by the way, IMC, instrument meteorological conditions, you cannot see outside the plane. You see clouds, or as my wife calls it, CSS. Can't see.
Yeah.
You can
anything.
fill in, You can fill in the other rest there, but yeah.
So, spoken like a true Christian,
right?
So I knew at that point, I was like this, and I was like, we got to get the heading. So then, okay, headwind, right? Heading indicator the directional gyro needs to be fixed. Well, you can't just go to the avionics shop and have them fix that right now. These guys are so busy, and then my partners in the plane want to make sure it can slave to the autopilot that we have. Well, you're looking for the right kind of directional gyro to slave to the autopilot. It was like months, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not going to work. And then again, George comes in and saves the day. He goes, Chris, there's an instrument trader out in Fremont that has really nice avionics. It's great. It's a 172, a two 275s, a 750.
Okay.
I mean, it's
the stack is great.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And he goes, I can get you on that plane, and we can finish up your training in that. And I was like, awesome. So the next 4 weeks, basically, I spent 3 or 4 days driving out to Fremont, which
how far?
Fremont's about 35 minutes from home.
Okay.
Before I see patients. So I was out there. We were wheels up by no later than 5 o'clock every single morning, and flying in the dark the whole time under Foggles. Actually, the first time anyway, I can take another step forward, but as far as a sidebar. But when I finally got to fly after I passed my check ride, so we did that for 3 weeks, and then I was ready. Then he goes, well, I got another, because the examiner that I had was not in Omaha. He came in from Denver. He's a FedEx guy.
Okay.
So he can hop on FedEx, do a bunch of check rides, and go. Those guys, they're just not around in Omaha. And he goes, well, he can't. And so I was texting him back and forth, like, I think I'm going to be ready on this day. Can we do it on that day? And he's like, well, I'll see. And it was not going to happen. And you got 2 months. If you fail, you get 60 days to retake it. Otherwise, you got to do the whole thing over again. And so my instructor found another guy who was up in Stewart, Nebraska, which is about an hour and 15-minute flight from Fremont.
Okay.
So he was able to do it. So we fly up there
In the 172.
And so I take the check ride up there. Probably a couple days before I texted you, maybe the same day I texted you, and then I passed that check ride. I was able to kind of repeat, be much more proficient, much more precise. I did have better equipment for sure, but you're flying LPVs instead of LNAVs, right? So you can get lower. So you have both vertical guidance on all the different vertical and horizontal guidance. And the flight back, I filed an IFR flight plan, right? This is my first official IFR flight plan back into Fremont. So kind of cracked that bottle of champagne.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I hadn't had Foggles on in probably 2.5 months almost. Yeah. Where I was actually flying the whole, I was like,
can actually see
beautiful.
outside, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. So that was it. That's kind of the whole, I know it was kind of a long story, but there was a lot of struggles in there, and a lot of kind of resets of like, do I really want to do this? Is it really worth my time and effort and money? And it was totally worth it, right? The end was totally worth it.
Yeah.
Cooper Vision and the AOA have joined forces in a groundbreaking initiative to transform how optometrists treat children with myopia. The Myopia Collective aims to unite our profession and its allies to challenge the status quo and elevate the standard of care for children with myopia. Everyone is invited to become a member of the collective. By joining, you pledge to act in slowing childhood myopia progression. Membership includes regular updates and information about the collective's efforts, access to educational opportunities and resources, and insights from the ambassador optometrists who advocate for community policy and changes supporting the collective's mission. Click the link in the show notes to join the collective today.
If you're ready to stop feeling overwhelmed and start running a safer, more profitable practice, here's the next step. First, book a strategy call with us, Practice Performance Partners. We'll uncover the biggest risks and opportunities in your practice. Then, choose the package that fits your goals. From there, we'll get you launched with confidence, with clear systems, with expert support, and with peace of mind, knowing your practice is protected and set up to grow. Don't wait until something goes wrong. Book your strategy call with us, Practice Performance Partners, today.
So my takeaways, first of all, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's an interesting journey.
I know it's not where you thought we were going to go.
No. Well, the curveball was the failure, right?
Yeah, that's
that
right.
was, and it, look, again, for the listener, for the uninitiated listener right here, the IFR is the hardest rating to pass. It is not uncommon for people to have some type of discontinuance because something didn't go right. They turned left when they should have gone right. They missed a step, like whatever that might be. It happens. What I want to do in as efficient and concise way as possible is try and be that bridge between you and the listeners of what I would ask that they take away from that story.
Totally.
So first of all, PSA for all general aviation. Airplanes just don't fall out of the sky. Chris talked about engine failures and things like that. It's not like these things are failing every single day and planes are dropping out of the sky like bird, you know what. It is everything in life is possible. Is it probable? No. Is it possible? Yes. And do we have contingency plans in place? As pilots, we always have a contingency plan. You always have a plan B, sometimes a plan C, maybe a plan D. Usually you at least want a plan A and B, though. So again, please, for the uninitiated, airplanes' engines are not just failing left and right. We plan accordingly because anything in life is possible.
Yeah, while you're kind of saying that, I mean, just to give you some perspective, when you think about, and this is why the instrument rating is so important, is that when the FAA looks at how many mishaps are because of engine failures, it's like 10%.
It's less. It's 90% right at that, if not less.
Is pilot error.
Correct. So these are safe. These are reliable. They are enjoyable.
They don't fall out
They
of
are
sight.
time machines, and they allow in the situations that Chris and I use them from a utilitarian standpoint. They are quite literally time machines.
Yeah.
To your point, the travel schedule that you had lined up would not be possible flying commercial,
right,
and honoring the commitments that you made to your family, to your businesses, etc.
Yep.
So they are quite literally time machines in that sense. They allow you to get from point A to point B. So with that PSA, I was jotting down keywords as you were going through your story. And the first word that came to mind was optionality. In the beginning, you mentioned that, right, the ability to have options. And as a business owner in our businesses, the more backed into a corner that you are, the less confident that we can have that we're making the right decision. Because and the optionality was coming, you were talking about, I was trying to make my schedule work, and I was trying to like shove all this into a closing and tight window. And the more optionality that we can have in all things in life, the better chances that we have of making the right decision the first time in our business.
Yeah.
That was one thing that came to mind. The other thing, this is another example, and again, it's true for me, it's true for Chris, it's true for any pilot that has just passed their instrument rating. They are at the height of being the most proficient IFR pilot with the least amount of experience. Translation, very overconfident but underexperienced. It is Dunning-Kruger effect 101. We are at the top of the confidence curve, but very, very tight on the experience. We don't have any, right? That's why when you talk to a pilot that has 10,000 hours, it's like, well, what made up those 10,000 hours? Did you fly the same flight over the same milk run over and over and over again, or did you have the depth and breadth of experience that make you a well-rounded pilot? So in business, just be cognizant of the confidence that you have and explore where that confidence came from. Are we truly confident based off of the experience that we have? Or is it, if we explored it, is it textbook knowledge that we have, which is great. We have to have that.
It's foundational.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But asking ourselves the question, and you did, right? That's why you, like, I would say you probably did it more than a lot of other pilots by taking another pilot with you. If I'm drawing a true, if I'm putting myself under the microscope, I don't do that near as much as you do. I probably should do that a little bit more. I've flown with 4 different CFIs, but only a couple times per year.
Yeah.
I fly about, to put it in perspective, just under 200 hours a year. Just crossed 1,200 hours of total time in flying since 2019. So, but again, experience is one thing, proficiency and getting different perspectives from different mentors. The same is true in business. As a business owner, as a practice owner, being by ourselves in our practice, being with our team on an island per se, can, in essence, sometimes feed that Dunning-Kruger effect, where we've been doing the same thing over and over again, and so we get that vote of confidence. We think that, oh, I'm the bee's knees, I'm doing all this right. Until we align with a mentor or somebody that has more experience, more well-rounded experience, to point out some of our blind spots and maybe share better, different approaches to solving the same problems. The other point that I want to, second to last point, what you were demonstrating by, first of all, great CFI, sourcing other airplanes to help you cross this finish line. I mean, dude, that is an awesome CFI, truly committed to your success. So I think that the lesson that I'm taking from that is be careful who you're, careful's the wrong word.
No, you do need to be careful.
Be careful who you partner
if I would have been on a CFII that was just trying to build hours to get to the airlines, it would have been on me, and I would have been floundering, and I would have probably found some solution, but I mean, I can't say enough good things about him, because you're right. Like I have been, my first CFI in my private pilot, she was terrible. Yeah, she was terrible. Yeah, and she was just milking me for hours. Yep.
So you do have to be careful about who you partner with and make sure that goals and intentions are aligned. The transition, or the parallel that I see in the profession of optometry is, what are the professional organizations that you're a part of? Is their mission in alignment with your mission? Is their definition of success in alignment with your definition of success? And if there's friction there, explore it. Be conversational about it. Address it. Don't just sweep it under the rug and think, oh, well, I can't change it. Yeah. Take ownership of what you have the ability to control in your business. But on that point, when you were talking about like getting up early and driving before you see patients, the phrase that immediately came to mind is, there is a subtle but extremely distinct difference between wanting and willing to do something. Everybody wants whatever version of success that they think of, or even more, right? Envy is comparison is a thief of joy. They want somebody else's success.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You can have whatever version of success you want. Are you willing to do the things necessary? Are you willing to, right? We all get 168 hours in a week. Are you going to align action with intention? Do you want things? Everybody wants things. Yeah. Are you willing to take the steps necessary? And the last thing that I wrote down, equipment does matter. Equipment makes a big difference. It can make the workload easier and more efficient, which, again, Captain Obvious statement in the practice and business of optometry, the equipment that you have matters to the experience and the scope of care that you can deliver to your patient. Obviously, from a clinical standpoint, that is not my sandbox, but on the practice management side of things, again, going back to the groups that you are a member of and that support your practice, what quote-unquote equipment are they bringing to the table? Can you leverage in your business to ultimately run the best and most profitable practice for you, for your patients, for your team, and ultimately for your family? Those are my bullet points.
Yeah, they're great.
Any thoughts?
I think that's. I think that sharing that story and then having you link it up couldn't have been any better from a business perspective, right? Because, like you said, I can divert and talk about piloting all day long, and it doesn't really translate. But I think the key from my perspective is,
do something challenging.
Yeah, do something hard, right?
If you haven't done something challenging in a long time, I would really encourage you as a listener, not you, but
Yeah,
like,
no,
I'm
no,
talking to the
right.
listener right
That's
now,
right.
right? Explore that.
Yeah, I think that there's has to be. I think if I were going to reflect on this, there are failures you can have in life that you can't recover from, right? Like there are things you can do personally that you can't recover from, that damage you so significantly it's unrecoverable. I don't think we should entertain those failures,
No.
right? Those failures we should stay.
They're
we
also
should-
largely avoidable.
Correct. You can see the line far, far away, right? But there should be this opportunity, I think, and this is me speaking as a man for the female listeners out there. It's just because I think this is really important as a man, that men need the opportunity to potentially fail. Doesn't mean they have to fail. Just means they have to be able to have the opportunity, because then they have the real opportunity to succeed. And I think in our lives, as we become more successful in business, we can become more comfortable, and then we never have the ability. And maybe it translates to women. It might. I just don't know. But we just have no opportunity to succeed or fail, because everything's just so comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's also a first world problem. But
I'll take a huge risk here and try and go out on a limb on the
you
female
should.
side. And look, the only filter that I have to speak to this through is conversations with my wife.
Yeah.
My wife has transparently said that becoming a mom changes women's outlook on managing risk in life. Completely understand.
Oh, yeah. Jamie won't fight with me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Completely understand and get that. And this is the risky part. So again, if you want to send the hate mail, send it to podcast@integratedpwm.com. Do not blow up Chris. This is me. Chris is not, I'm not speaking for Chris here. If you have that feeling from a female's point of view, all I would encourage you to explore is, are you suffering more in your own imagination than in reality? See, I'll actually blame Seneca the Younger for that,
Sure.
from a Stoic quote. So blame Seneca, if you blame the Stoics, right? Are we
Yeah.
suffering? And maybe I would interchange suffering, maybe isn't the right word, but are we limiting our own potential and the impact and the value that we can deliver in this profession because the fears that we have in our mind are bigger than what they actually would be in reality?
Yeah,
and I think
that's
that's
a
a unisex
I
type
think it is too.
phrase and quote.
Yeah, I think it is too. Yeah, so I think that's the thing. And so, like, there's certain failures you want to avoid, but there's certain things that you have to have opportunities to fail at, which means you can truly succeed. And then small failures, like, don't be afraid of small failures. Like this, in hindsight, the
You
reality
don't fail,
is,
you just learn.
yeah. And the reality is that the FAA, unless I bust altitude or
Right.
don't listen to ATC and I don't follow what I'm supposed to do, they never get to look at me again, ever.
Nope.
Right. And my license is not any more restricted than Adam's. If I have a mishap, somebody's going to be like, well, he failed to check. Yeah, but I mean, they're going to look for any excuse.
Right.
To blame the mishap on something. So if I didn't fail the check ride, it's for some other reason, some other mistake that I made,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I think the bottom line is that like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You can get beyond and learn from. And I learned so much. Like, honestly, like I said, just like Andrew said, I needed it, and I'm a way better pilot for it.
Good for you.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for doing this with me, man.
Thank you. Like I said, when you texted me, I'm like, sweet, another reason to poke some holes in the sky. Let's go see Chris and hang out. And like, completely small world, turns out one of my neighbors in my neighborhood is the Ray-Ban rep, and he's here. Like, I'm walking past and we make eye contact. It's like, Chris? Not you, Chris.
Yeah.
Other Chris. I'm like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
So
No, it's crazy. So
optometry truly, again, is a big, small sandbox.
That's right. So optometry is, and so is piloting. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you this story. This will be the last story, and we'll end the episode. But George and I were flying down. So George is my CFII, and we were flying down to Houston on that first, so our long cross country, or our IFR cross country. We landed in Tahlequah, and we landed in Tahlequah because a few weeks later I was planning on going back to Tahlequah to do a talk. And I was planning on going to Houston again to do a talk, and so I was kind of following the same one. And I had expected I'm gonna have my own instrument rating at that time, so I'm gonna make the flight by myself.
Yep.
And so we're in Tahlequah. We're talking about the next leg of the flight, refueling. And now Tahlequah is a not very good pavement runway. It might get a couple planes a day at best. and there's these old guys. They're probably in their 70s and 80s, sitting around a table.
The hanger rats.
Yep. And
I say that affectionately.
No, totally affectionately. So they walk in. They don't really pay us any attention. And George and I are talking about the next flight. And after we're done with the chat, I go to the bathroom, and I hear this guy goes, "George, is that you?" And he goes, "You've been in my mind." And it was from the 80s.
Oh my
George
gosh.
did a twin Comanche class about, a multi-engine class, and this guy was in it. And he goes, "You saved my bacon," and it was something about, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was about pulling your gear up, right? Like all of our CFIs tell us to pull our gear up when we run out of runway. Mm-hmm. But George is like, he's like, "Listen, you're way out of runway way before you think you are.
Yeah.
So just pull your gear up as fast as you can."
Yeah. Yeah.
And he goes, "That saved my bacon because I was able to glide." Something happened. But anyway, it was like, Tahlequah, Oklahoma, at this specific time. I mean, it's just like your worlds get smaller and smaller the more impactful
the 7
you get.
degrees of separation, or Kevin Bacon's 7 degrees of separation, whatever it is, just becomes truer and truer the deeper the relationships go.
Yeah.
So,
thanks, Adam, for doing this.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. I appreciate it. I will let you close out your show, or if that's where we want to end.
No, Adam,
close it out.
Just tell everybody. So everybody, thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful. Sorry to indulge myself a little bit on pilotage, but I wanted to share that story with everybody. But I wanted Adam to be the one to pull it out of me. Adam, tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh, appreciate that. So longtime host of the 2020 Money, recently renamed and rebranded 2020 Money, the business of optometry. Shows come out every Monday. We're at 360 some episodes and counting by the time this gets released. You can find that on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, or at integratedpwm.com.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you, my friend.